Good evening, everyone, wherever you might be watching around the country or indeed the world. Tonight marks the halfway point in the Apex Rear Wing DRM Championship, and we're heading to our third American round in 5 weeks. New York State is famous for 3 things: Woodstock, Flushing Meadows, and Watkins Glen. And no, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a music festival or a tennis tournament, it's a motor race. The last round, Sam Smith became the first double winner of the championship with a dominant victory in Barbagallo and took the outright championship lead. But not here tonight. His teammate Berto carrying the flag for the Black Sheep and Renan team. But will the Pink Pigs have the same advantage here in Watkins Glen? Time will tell. Once again, Stairs and Matt Dunlop in commentary for you tonight. Good evening, Matty.
Good evening, Stairs. Great to be with you as always, and it's great to be commentating a race around Watkins Glen, which is personally one of my favourite tracks anywhere in the world, Stairs.
An absolute classic and it's actually quite a surprise that Apex Rear Wing has never visited this circuit before, considering how, it's one of those circuits that it just makes it into your list of classic tracks anywhere around the world. I reckon a lot of people would have that in their top 10.
That's absolutely right. And a lot of people who played sim racing and started out back in the days of the NASCAR racing simulators would have definitely played Watkins Glen and realised how enjoyable it is in any vehicle.
Absolutely. Let's have a quick look at the driver points heading into this round before we move on to how people are doing in the practice. And as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, Sam Smith taking the championship lead last round with his victory, and Goofball Antics finishing on the podium. Still in second, he's now 9 points adrift, but with a chance to retake the championship lead this evening with Sam Smith absent. Madbird in third place, just 1 point ahead of Berto, who scored no points in Barbagallo as a result of that start line incident with Decimage. Xeris in fifth place, 43 points. He's come to grips with that BMW 320. Expect him to move further up that list as time goes on. Brenton Foley, he's had a fairly messy series. He'd be the first one to admit. They're on 41 points in 6th place. Resist tied on points with Pablo, but ahead by virtue of the countback. Decimage down there in 9th place. He received a 1-position penalty for that start line incident that put Berto out of the race in Barbagallo, and just ahead of Roadhog. Those two both on 28 points. That rounds out the top 10 for the points.
Yeah, so with a couple of those guys missing, Sam Smith especially, here, this is going to throw the championship wide open, not least this race result, because that's 2 Porsche 935s in Sam Smith and Decimage, who won't be making an appearance tonight at Watkins Glen. And this being such a power-favouring circuit, I know I say that a lot, but this one has a couple of huge back straights and a lot of very fast banked corners that really favour the Porsche 935s, as we can see in practice at the moment with Berto currently leading by a margin of 1.5 seconds. That opens up a couple of places in the top echelons of this race for some of the minnows or the underdogs to make appearances, Stairs.
It does. There is an opportunity with Sam Smith missing for some of those cars. Perhaps Nether driving one of the Porsche 935s. In fact, only 2 of the Porsche 935s here tonight with Decimage and Sam Smith both absent. So they really picked badly the circuit that they would miss. A circuit that, as you say, looks set to favour those cars with a top speed advantage because of those bank corners and the long straights. Some of those straights uphill as well, which compounds the lack of downforce for the BMW 320s. Downforce, I mean to say, horsepower, of course. Resist, perhaps, would be one to look at. In that BMW M1, he's been knocking on the door of a podium for thick end of a season and a half. And I know I keep saying that, but it was a good performance he put in Barbagallo and was fighting for the podium, but unfortunately the strategy just didn't work out for him with those BMW 320s able to no-stop in Barbagallo, and he had to make a fuel stop, which dropped him down the order, but he certainly had the ability to battle his brother Xeris in that M1. So I would expect that he could favour well in tonight's race.
He's been doing well in practice so far. When I tuned in earlier with about an hour left to go in the session, Resist was sitting at the top of the time sheets before Berto dropped his sandbags and posted a lap 2.3 seconds faster than Resist is currently able to manage. But the BMW M1 is still a force to be reckoned around this track, of course, carrying a lot of horsepower behind it. Is mixing it at the moment with a couple of the Ford Capris of Brenton Foley, and I think, no, he's got 2 of the BMW 320s behind him in the practice session at the moment. Goofball currently sitting 4th with Xeris in 5th position. So it's a bit of a mixed bag at the front of this session so far. So it could be some unexpected results, especially if we've seen some of these wild incidents that have been popping up all over the calendar so far.
Best result of the season last week for Xeris at Barbagallo with that second place in the BMW 320. He said after the race that he'd come to terms with that BMW, figured out how to drive it, and he's a bit of a stickler for the old setups. He was pouring through the data, and he discovered exactly where the optimal time to shift gears in that BMW 320 was by looking up the torque curve information in the game files. So very different to the way many of us would approach it, but it seems to have worked for him. Goofball Antics seems to have come to grips with that car a lot earlier, getting the win in Belle Isle. But at the moment, he's a couple of tenths up on Xeris in practice, so it'll be telling who comes out ahead between the two BMW 320 drivers tonight.
Yeah, some very different schools of thought with some of these drivers and how they're going to wrangle the most out of these cars that they possibly can. And Xeris, as we've touched on quite a lot throughout this series, is a very experienced steerer, having, of course, dominated last season in the ARW Caterham Championship by a staggering margin and facing opposition only from Brenton Foley on occasion, with a couple of battles here and there. But Xeris will be struggling around this track, Watkins Glen, of course, with that horsepower deficit that the BMW 320 has. But it does remain to be seen whether or not a few surprises can be thrown up, of course. Xeris is coming through the 90, turn 1 of this Watkins Glen track. So many timeless corners around this bend. Doesn't feel at all artificial. Looks like they just found a plot of land out in upstate New York and going, let's put the tarmac here, here, and here, and that'll be fine. Follows the lay of the land. Really dramatic elevation change and some very interesting corners as well.
I think that's what a lot of modern circuits are missing, is following the natural lay of the land rather than using earth moving to create an unnatural contour. Just find somewhere that's got a little bit of natural elevation and stick a piece of tarmac on it. That's my opinion. Personally, Xeris is sat in 5th in the championship, but he's in a gaggle of cars from 3rd down to 6th place, separated by only 7 points. So there's 49 points for Madbird. Xeris is on 43, Berto's on 48, and Foley's on 42. So he could vault himself up to the front of that gaggle of cars into 3rd quite easily tonight if he has a decent result. But not if Berto has anything to say about it based on his pace tonight. But with Sam Smith absent, it gives all of these guys a chance to catch up a little bit. And especially if Goofball Antics has 1 or 2 bad races, all of those guys could potentially still be in the championship hunt.
That's exactly right. Speaking of bad races, Berto, of course, having been taken out on the first lap before the first corner was even reached last time out by Decimage, who suffered a 1-position penalty from the race result last time out as a result. So Berto will be looking to recoup a lot of those points. He had a potential 25 points that you get for winning a race, of course. And the DNF meant he scored zilch at the last race. So that deficit is something that he can more than easily make up if he can keep his nose clean and if he can produce consistent results from here on out.
Yeah, he's had a few messy qualifying sessions in recent weeks. He got the pole position in the opening round in Brno, but in fact he did get the one in Belle Isle as well, but that sort of fell apart fairly early on for the 2 Porsches. 5th and 4th are his qualifying efforts since then. So it just really hasn't quite come together. He did his lap quite early on in Barbagallo. If you remember, he was way down in the practice times and didn't really know what the time to beat was at the time that he set his lap. So it didn't quite work out for him. He ended up about 4th or 5th, and mired in the field, there's always a risk. And that came to fruition with the accident that we've talked about. So it looks much, much better from his perspective now, nearly 2 seconds up on the next closest guy. So if he can replicate anything near that sort of pace in the shootout, then he should be well clear and our outstanding favourite for victory tonight.
Yeah, it certainly made qualifying interesting at Barbagallo. And now that he's back in it and currently sitting in 1st in the practice leaderboard, it's going to result in Berto going out last on track to post his lap time, being able to look at some of the other guys and seeing what lines are taking, what gears they're using through certain corners, and seeing if he can use that to his advantage. Just a reminder of how qualifying works. It's a 1-lap shootout for each of these guys. They've got an out lap, one flying lap, and then they're done. And the order in which they go out is based on the reverse order of how they finish the practice session, which would currently mean that Rody would start qualifying session first in his Ford Capri.
Now, Birdo, if he does get the win tonight, would end up on 73 points. Even if Goofball Antics and Sam Smith got no points tonight, he would still be behind both of those drivers. So that just goes to show how much of an advantage those two have eked out in the opening 4 rounds of this championship, and how costly it was for Birdo to be taken out at the start in Barbagallo. It serves as a reminder how much the point system that we use in Apex Rear Wing for this series is based on keeping your nose clean. The consistency factor is so important with the point system that we use. It awards points all the way down to 15th place, so theoretically points being left on the board by 2 imaginary drivers who aren't here tonight in 14th and 15th, which is impossible to finish in. So we're borrowing that point system from MotoGP, and it certainly seems to be giving us a good fight for the championship.
That's exactly right. It rewards finishing and finishing well consistently. So the 2 guys at the top, Sam Smith and Goofball Antics, have finished on the podium for every single race so far, which means they're well ahead of Birdo in 3rd position. As it stands at the moment, that could change over the course of the season, of course. But with Birdo missing out on that points finish last time out, as you said, he would have been able to take home at least some points had he been able to finish the race. But no, unfortunately, it wasn't to be as a result of that incident. We are just getting started for qualifying now. Everyone's sitting in a pit lane queue, waiting to take their turns, and it sounds like Rody is about to head out and move on to his outlap around Watkins Glen International.
So as he makes his tour around the outlap, we'll just give you a bit of an idea of what the racetrack looks like from on board, and we're just waiting for the timer to start ticking down. Beeping the horn there, probably knows he's on the broadcast, and then forces me to compete with the revving of his Ford Capri engine. And the lights are now green, and nearly does a Romain Grosjean, spins it on the pit exit, but he's managed to avoid that. So coming out of the pit lane, this is the exit of turn 1, heading down to turn 2, and you'll see what I mean about the banking. We're talking about you can carry so much more speed than you would if it was a flat profile, but there's banking on this track. Then you go through turns 3 and 4, and then from here you're basically flat onto the back straight, and the cars with the horsepower advantage will certainly pull away through here into the inner loop chicane. And you can see more banking on the inside of the corner, so your line is imperative here. Round to the outer loop and keeping it tight to the inside. You can see where the tyre marks are. Down through to the chute to turn 6. You see where different configurations of the circuit go. He's caused some damage to his front right there by going off, so absolutely no temperature in the brakes. Got to be careful of that on an outlap. And then down to the bit they call the toe, with their configuration of the circuit they're using called the boot. This is the toe of the boot. Then up the hill and down to the heel, which is also known as turn 8, a sharp right-hander. Very good passing opportunity if you get up alongside to the inside. And again, all of these corners with significant banking to them. Down to 9, which is a very sharp left-hander. Not much banking on that one. And then another short straight down to turn 10, penultimate corner of the racetrack. Lots of speed you can carry through it here. And then to the final corner, you can see the pit entry line. Cross over it, doesn't matter too much. Get on the throttle as early as you can, and that'll start his lap. Let's go on. Let's go off board to see the first flying lap of this qualifying session.
So there is a lot of runoff around this track in certain parts, such as through here in turn 1, and you can see just the huge amount of concrete pavement there. But if you do run around the outside of that ripple strip, you will receive a track cut violation. It is one of a few places around this track where you can get one of those, so they have to be wary not to be too overzealous through those corners. But then you go through the S's where the walls hug the corners and the side of the track almost directly. So there is absolutely zero runoff, and you have to be perfect. It's quite hard to get a good line through there as Rody cuts across the end of the chicane there, and he looks to just his lap away at this point.
Do you reckon he's got a track cut? We were talking about track cuts, and he did I believe, have all four wheels over the curb on the inner part of the chicane, and he's
He
exited
does
out.
have a track cut.
Yeah. So we were...
Very unfortunate for Rody.
Well, that's means he's going to be starting from the back, which means 13th place, as long as no one else gets a track cut after him.
Well, Bang is out now, picking up on his out lap where Rody left off on his flying lap as he goes through the toe now. In another one of the Ford Capris for Main Force Racing, this the Pursuit Special, inspired by the Mad Max livery, of course.
Yeah,
As he goes across... Sorry, go on, Stairs.
I was going to say, it's great to see these two Mad Max inspired liveries, the Pursuit and the Interceptor.
Yeah, they're fantastic looking cars. And I always try and jump on for a practice session a little bit before I jump in the commentary booth with you, Stairs. And I always make sure to grab Pablo's version, the Interceptor, because it just looks absolutely fantastic. The simple colours are very, very 70s and 80s.
How are you enjoying the Ford Capri as opposed to the Lancia that you were driving? Oh, Bang has absolutely binned it on the entrance to the final corner, the end of his outlap. And that's a big moment in this qualifying session. He's not going to know what sort of grip he has when he hits the brakes for turn 1 here.
He's powering on through it. He's not going to throw this lap away just yet, although he is completely missing a front splitter, and he looks to be carrying not very much speed through turn 1 at all. So if his lap time is posted, look, he's missed the apex a little bit there through turn 2 as well. So it's going to be hard for him to get as much power as he wants down through these S's.
And that goes back to what you were saying before, Matty, about some parts of the track, there's acres of tarmac runoff, but you've got to pick your moment. If you're going to have an accident, you want to have it where there is runoff. He picked a moment where there was a big wall on the outside of the corner, and that's been quite a costly incident for him. Yeah,
turn 11, the final turn of this track, has a remarkably small amount of runoff, and it's very easy to get caught out there if you don't know. No. And he's decided, I think he's got a track cut, so he's decided to put his lap to bed. So it will be Bang and Rody starting from the rear of the grid. I would say, would that put Bang behind Rody in the standings? Qualifying that is?
That's a very good question, because neither of them have registered a time. It has put Bang ahead on our screen. He's showing in 12th on live timing, although his first sector time was slower than Rody's by about 2.3 seconds. So I guess that's one that we'll just put a bookmark on and see if we remember to touch on that when they're lining up on the grid, because so far no one has set a time yet. So Tyrrell stands to just make 2 positions from last if he just finishes this lap.
Yeah, he's starting quite far down the qualifying order. Wasn't doing too well in practice, Tyrrell. Let's see what he can do in this qualifying session. And what were we talking about before Bang did that? I think we're talking about the Ford Capri itself.
Oh, yes, I was asking you what it's like to drive before Bang demolished his one.
Yeah, that's right. I quite enjoy it, especially in comparison to the Lancia Beta, I think it is, which none of the guys have elected to use in this series, and for good reason.
I mean, why would you call your car Beta anyway? Why would you call it an Alpha?
Exactly. You know, if you're driving a car that's called the Beta and not the Alpha, you're in for a pretty shoddy deal. So the Capri is, it's very good to drive. It likes to get the back end out a little bit, but it's manageable. So Tyrrell's crossed the line now. He's starting his flying lap. Hopefully the first flying lap we'll see finished.
Having said that, sorry to cut across you, I'm bad at that today, aren't I? If you're an Italian manufacturer, you probably don't want to call your car an Alpha if it's not an Alpha.
That's exactly right. Maybe Alfa Romeo can make a car called the Alfa Romeo Alpha just to confuse the hell out of everybody.
I would like that.
Posts his first sector split, he's down 2.7 tenths from what I imagine would have been Rody's sector time from when he made his attempt on the circuit. He is technically still fastest, having been the only one to not throw a lap away so far. We'll see how he does as he gets to the second sector split, which neither of the two before were able to reach.
Yeah, so far, well, the time set by Tyrrell is a 30.72 the first sector. The mid sector for Bang was 32.2, and for Rody was 30.2. So he is down on what Rody had done to the first sector. So far, he's got a lot further than Rody does. Unfortunately, we don't have anything to compare it to beyond that first sector. It looks pretty clean from what we've seen, and I think that's going to be Tyrrell's philosophy here, is just keep it on the track. Don't do any heroics. because it'll pay dividends. He won't be on the last row of the grid. That's for sure, if he finishes this lap with no issues here. We're coming up to the final corner where Bang had his problem. 2 wheels on the grass, that's a risky strategy. Not that he did that on purpose, I'm sure, but he manages to keep everything in check. Runs to the line, and the time to beat is 1 minute 50 flat.
So we've got a time on the board finally, ladies and gentlemen. It's a 1 minute 50 flat from Tyrrell in the Ford Capri. But now Nether rounds the final corner in the first of 2 Porsche 935s this race. Let's see what he can do. I'd hazard a guess and say this lap time will be very far up the proceedings for most of the qualifying session. Gets into turn 1, gets very close to the apex. Nicely done. A little bit of slide on the exit. Didn't make it all the way to the outside curb, so that's a little bit of time lost through there. And he's quite distant from the apex through the S's. It's quite hard to get that line right because you want to be careful not to hit that wall on the outside of the turn 3 exit leading into turn 4 because it's very easy to do. As he makes full use, touches 310 kilometers an hour on the back straight. He's 1.3 seconds up in this Porsche 935. Gets 2 wheels up in the air and he straight lined the exit of that chicane. I think he was a little bit rattled by that 2-wheel incident on the run into that chicane. Not sure if he'll get a track cut for that. Excuse me. He seems to be soldiering on regardless. My throat just didn't keep up with my speech there. He makes the run down into the chute, which is turn number 6, I believe. Still running at the moment.
He carried an awful lot of speed into that chicane. I didn't see how he was going to get it stopped, and he didn't. Doesn't look like he's got that track cut, though, as we're seeing the sector times coming up, and he is pressing on with this lap. So looking good for Nether. He set a 46.9 in practice, so anything anywhere near that will be good enough to beat Tyrrell's time.
2.2 seconds down so far on that time, so he's looking very racy so far as he goes through the hill on the run onto the corner, which rejoins the long circuit to the short format, which is, of course, used in NASCAR and other forms of motorsport. So you want to get a little bit close to that wall on the exit of that corner, as I was going to touch on earlier, because it's really comes very close to the sides of the circuit. You want to leave yourself no margin for error. Don't get 2 wheels in the grass. It's pretty dangerous to do at any point on this track, but especially not there. He rounds the final turn, keeps it nice and steady. It's a 1 minute 47.264, which puts Nether in first so far by a margin of 2.8 seconds over Tyrrell.
Good lap there from Nether, only about 3/10 away from what he did in practice, and we all know how hard it is to replicate your lap time from practice in qualifying. As we look towards Greg Turra.
It's like when you're painting a picture. It's never as good the second time around, is it?
I'll just ask Bob Ross. He apparently painted 2 or 3 paintings for each episode of the Joy of Painting, but that's a digression if ever I've seen one. Greg Turra's first chance to actually qualify for an Apex rear wing race. He tried to make it in Barbagallo, but internet issues got the better of him. So good to see him out. He's done some races for the Automobilista Australia League, and he's been mighty competitive over there. A little bit down on what Nether has done through the first sector, but some of that can be chalked up to the lack of power in that BMW 320.
Had a bit of a lock-up on the run into the chicane as well. Won't hamper his lap time too much. Might make his car a little bit shaky in that front right corner, of course. But this section here may be where the BMW 320 can stretch its legs a little bit around these fast corners. With that lightweight and what I imagine is a little bit more stability as a result, you're able to keep a lot more momentum through there relative to the car's power. So Greg Tart will possibly make up a little bit of time through Sector 2. We'll find out as he comes towards, I believe, the heel is the corner immediately after the Sector 2 split. I could be wrong. I've forgotten where the split is. There we go. He's down 0.4 of a second, so he has made up quite a bit of time there. So it's great to see from Greg Tara, although this final part of the track is a little bit of a mixed bag of tight corners and fast straights. So anything can really happen here. He may stay around the same amount of time. He may go to the inside and hit the fence.
Yeah, on the exit of 9, just lit the rears up and straight out of the fence. That's going to cost him all the way down to turn 10, and you'll have a bit of damage to boot. Won't really know what kind of grip he has turning right until he gets to the final corner, but he chucks it in, and that will have been a costly error for Greg Turra. He comes to the line. It's already not the fastest. He slots in... he must have got a track cut. No, he did. Lifetiming took a moment to come up. He is half a tenth up on Tyrrell. Not much at all, but he does slot into provisional second, but that is likely to be a time that starts somewhere near the back.
Narrowly fell out of the 1 minute 49s. And now Pablo in the car that I was mentioning earlier that I like to take for practice spins around this track is starting his flying lap as he goes through the S's. It's looking a little bit wobbly, but it's relatively clean through the S's. Makes his way onto the back straight now, charging down towards the inner loop, which I like to call the bus stop chicane. It's a lot like a bus stop. A lot of chicanes around the world are referred to as bus stops. This is a true bus stop if there ever was one.
And he got it stopped. He got it stopped there. Nether taking way too much speed into the bus stop, as you put it. It's a bit like one of the Adelaide Metro buses we have that sometimes don't like to stop at the bus stop. They just blow straight through them. But Pablo did it very well.
He's taken a late apex through the chute. I'm not sure if that was an intentional or if he just carried a little bit too much speed on the run into that corner. He was a little bit down in the first sector. We'll have to see how he does when he comes towards the second now. He's nice and neat and tidy through the toe. And the toe is an interesting corner because the car wants to grip onto the inside of the track as you're exiting that bend. It's very hard to get the ideal line. He's almost a second down, so quite some way off the pace of Nether. Have to see if he can make any of that up in the final sector. He's still looking pretty neat and tidy, and I'd say he's just taking the same approach as Tyrrell for this lap, just keeping it straight, keeping it smooth and steady, and getting it back to the finish line in one-piece stairs.
Yeah, it was pretty clean through turn 9, which was the corner that Greg Tara came unstuck on, so he should slot in between Nether and Greg Tara, probably about 1.5 seconds down on what Nether did based on that Porsche 935 Turbo's advantage down the straight. And he's found time. Well, it makes a liar of me. I shouldn't have made a guess because 0.6. He's actually found a bit of time in that final sector. Has Pablo?
Yeah, he has found a little bit of time there. It's very interesting to see. And like I said earlier, this qualifying session is throwing up some very unpredictable results so far. Roadhog now starts his flying lap as he comes through turn 2 in the fantastic sounding Toyota Celica, and that thing looks absolutely rapid.
Certainly does. It's just a wedge-shaped car with, I have to say, Mustang-styled rear or tail lights there, in a bit of a Mustang style. I always found that quite interesting as he comes into the bus stop chicane, or the inner loop as it's actually known.
He's down 0.4 of a second or thereabouts, off by about 100th and a half to that extent. So he's sort of close to Nether, but he's a little bit down so far. And it sounds like I've gotten bus stop in stairs head. So that's something I've got over him now as he goes into the chute. Very tight to the apex, very nice and clean through that corner. It's looking very good so far for Roadhog.
Down to the toe. Downhill braking zone, quite tricky, long banked corner. And the exit's so important as you're going up the hill and over the rise towards the heel. We're looking for a mid-sector time very shortly indeed, and he's up by 0.3 of a second. Half the devil's number there, 333. And Roadhog is well on his way to surpassing Nether at the top of the tree. We saw that Pablo gained time on Nether through the final sector. Can Roadhog do likewise and extend his advantage?
I just saw him got 2 wheels in the dirt on the exit of the toe there earlier in the lap, and I reckon he got just about as far away into the grass as you want to go in that corner. Any further, and I think he would have rotated that car, so he did very well to keep it in one piece there. Just nudges the ripple strip on the exit of the final turn, crosses the line, and he's first by a whole second. Incredible time from Roadhog.
That was a great lap there from Roadhog, and it just got better and better and better. You could see him dancing on the steering wheel through the corners, left and right, lots and lots of opposite lock in that Celica, and 146.1 is his reward. Provisionally pole position as we turn our attention to Madbird in the R-Tech Ford Capri.
Madbird currently third in the championship and looking to maintain that momentum as he goes into Watkins Glen. He had a podium finish at Belle Isle and a 4th place finish in Brno, which are 2 of his best results so far, with 2 8th place finishes at the last 2 races. He's down narrowly to Roadhog by 1.5 tenths, so he's looking very good so far in that Ford Capri.
Yeah, let's see if Madbird improves in the same way as Roadhog did towards the end of his lap as he goes down into the chute. So many braking zones that are downhill. It makes this track really, really quite a difficult prospect. And moves over to the left-hand side of the racetrack to take his line for the toe. It's been a pretty clean lap from Madbird so far. Up the hill, I didn't see him dip 2 wheels in the grass like Roadhog did. So will that pay any dividends on the timing screen? It has, nearly 0.2 of a second as he comes through the second sector split for Madbird.
Yeah, it looks like keeping it tight and close to the inside on the exit of the toe might be beneficial. He's up a little bit on Roadhog's time so far, and knowing the pace of this Ford Capri, I'd say he's on track to take provisional pole position. We'll have to wait and see There's still 2 corners to go, and he could very well throw it away. Knock on wood that he doesn't, of course. Let's see how he does.
One more corner for Madbird, and so absolutely line perfect through the final corner. Touch the curb on the inside, touch the curb on the outside, and across the line, 0.3 of a second. Provisional pole for Madbird. That's a great lap.
Fantastic lap from Madbird. Now, as we see the flying lap of Goofball Antics about to start in the BMW 320, we always refer to Goofball Antics as a qualifying specialist, and he's been able to pull some fantastic results out of the bag so far this season with this BMW 320. Having finished on the podium every single race so far, he's got some momentum. He's going to carry it into this race, and he's carried quite a bit of momentum into turn 1, but he's kept it nice and tidy on the exit. A little bit of a wobble, but he's managed it very well as he goes through the S's, and these BMW 320s can really keep themselves planted through this part of the track. Very close to both apexes, and he's absolutely flawless, as quick as he can get through the S's for the BMW 320. He's on the brakes now, or he's almost on the brakes, into the inner loop, and he's a whole second upstairs. That's unbelievable. He gets quite a bit of airtime off that entry into the chicane, though.
All out of shape in the second part of the. I was going to say bus stop. Nearly said shoot. In a loop is what I meant. Here's the shoot. And Goofball Antics is on the absolute ragged edge of grip. They really, really have to push the car in the corners here because they lose out down the straight. So they have to maximize their mid-corner speed as much as they possibly can.
Yeah, and with the elevation changes around this place, you've got to carry as much momentum around this track as you can in those lighter cars to keep those speeds up. He's on the straight between the toe and the heel. It's something I'd like to call the soul if it was down to me. And he's 2.5 seconds up. This is unbelievable from Goofball.
Well, this is going to be a very, very rapid lap. It suggests to me that maybe he was sandbagging in practice because it looks like he's on track to beat the time that he set in practice, which was a 44.9. And not just beat it, but obliterate it. So Goofball Antics, well, he must have been doing high fuel runs in the practice session because now he's taken the fuel out and he's got his race face on, and as we mentioned earlier in the lap, he is a bit of a qualifying specialist. He's going to come across the line to take provisional pole position by nearly 3 seconds, a 42.8. Thank you very much indeed.
That's absolutely ludicrous. I never expected that at all. And now Xeris is taken to the track in another one of the BMW 320s. What can we expect from Xeris? It was absolutely rapid last season, of course, dominating the whole season. So far in this championship, he's 5th at the moment. He's not registered any podium positions so far. And of course, he DNF'd. No, my apologies. He was 2nd last time out in Barbagallo. I was looking at the wrong entry in the point standings there, unfortunately. But that DNF in Brno means he is missing some points and he should be in this championship battle as it stands. He's 2 and a bit tenths down on Goofball's time. But let's see if he can make it up in this section here where Goofball had a little bit of a wobble. I reckon he's going to make up some time as we come through the chute. We won't find out for sure until he makes his way onto the hill. Through the chute, though, he's very neat and tidy. We do know that Xeris can keep a car on the straight and narrow with all 4 wheels pointing in the same direction, for lack of a better term. I do use that almost every race, I've noticed. But he's not as slidey as some of the other guys in this field, particularly Brenton Foley and Sam Smith, of course, who was absent this time around. Let's see how he does as he goes across the second sector split. He's down 1.3 seconds, so it's a big margin from Goofball so far, Stabs.
Yeah, but that's still on track to be faster than his lap that he set in practice. So I think Xeris might not have been sandbagging in practice, whereas Goofball was. I was going to say Xeris does have a knack for finding time. It doesn't look like he's driving particularly quickly, but he just finds time. But none of the theatrics that we saw from Goofball Antics laps, nowhere near as aggressive into the inner loop. But unfortunately, for Xeris' point of view, the timing screen doesn't lie, and it's going to show him down by 1.5 seconds. Still in second place, so he's ahead of the lap done by by Madbird. But it's a long way to go to get up to a 42.8. So we now turn our attention to the M1, driven by Resist.
Yeah, Resist had a very good showing in the early stages of the practice session. Ended up finishing in 3rd position. So this car is very quick around this circuit, and it'll be really good to see how he can do. Of course, Xeris' brother racing alongside him there had some great battles with Xeris last season in the Caterhams, and he's looking to repeat some of that. He's down 3.5 tenths on Goofball's time, mind you, and in that first sector, which is so power dominant, it's very interesting to see how far he is down off the BMW 320's time.
Well, that is very similar to the first sector time from Xeris, and if he replicates his time in practice, Resist will be within 1/10 of a second of the time set by Xeris. Done a 44.4, or Xeris has done a 44.4 in this qualifying session. Resist did a 44.4 as his fastest lap in practice, so it tends to point towards them being very, very closely matched for pace. 1.3 seconds down now. I think that's slightly below, or slightly slower than where his brother Xeris was to the second sector split. So he's got a bit of work to do now in the final sector. Can that M1's horsepower advantage dig him out of this one?
Yeah, at this rate, he's looking to be on par with Madbird so far in this section. Not very close to Xeris at all, unless he can make up a lot of time in his final sector. Has a big slide through the penultimate corner. Keeps it together, but he loses a little bit of time there. He comes onto the final straight now. Let's see how he can do. The time's ticking into 1 minute 44.220. That's second position by 2.5 tenths over Xeris.
Yeah, the M1 horsepower advantage dug him out of that one. It was still a pretty decent lap there from Resist. I think it'll be quite happy with starting in second place, but it's not going to finish that way, I should think. Foley's gone exceptionally wide through turn 1, so that's going to cost him all the way down to turn 2. And in fact, it does probably cost you out of 2 as well, because you're taking turn 2 at a huge rate of knots. He's in the wall! He's in the wall! Oh my goodness gracious me, the car's going to be damaged. He's all the way down the back straight, completely out of control on the grass. Can he get it stopped for the inner loop? I think he's going to abort this lap. Bretton Foley is starting from the back, one of 3 drivers now to not finish their qualifying lap in this qualifying session.
That was probably the longest crash I've seen in my life. That started through turn 2 and he made it all the way to turn 4, off all the apexes completely with the back end just trying to get itself slid out a little bit. And the end result was he absolutely slapped the wall on the exit of turn 3. As I mentioned earlier, you carry too much speed through that part of the track and it bites you hard.
Second in practice for Foley and Binder in qualifying. That pretty much sums up his season. We saw him go from first to last in Barbagallo in 1 lap. And he's quick, but he's not consistent. And unfortunately, that's costing him a lot of points.
Yeah, he was really looking for that start high on the grid for this race. Unfortunately, his race consistency, as you mentioned, has not been very good so far. He had a few spins and a few moments last time out at Barbagallo. So hopefully he can keep everything together. But if you crash on the qualifying lap like that, it doesn't bode well for the rest of his race. But now we see Birdo, the hot favourite for this race, rounding the final corner of his out lap, about to start his flying lap now. So let's see what he can do for Blek Schuppenrennen Racing, representing the team as Sam Smith is not participating this time around. He crosses the line to start his lap. On the run into turn 1, jumps on the anchors on this downhill section, keeps it nice and tight to the apex, a little bit wide.
Yeah, that was messy. That was messy from Berto. That was very similar to what we saw Brenton Foley do through turn 1. He was wide. Does he keep it together through the S's? This was the moment where Foley had his brush with the wall, but it looks pretty good from my point of view for Berto. That was very, very quick.
Looks picture perfect from Berto, and he's half a second up on Goofball's time. Exactly what we were expecting for this Porsche 935. And if you're flawless through that early part of the track, it really pays off. He's going through the outer loop now, very close to the inside of that corner. It's a long corner, the outer loop. As he makes his run down to the chute, jumps on the brakes all the way down to second gear now. A little bit far away from the apex. He's going to do a late apex and get a little bit of pace heading down towards the toe now. Not going to lose too much time as a result. Weird little braking zone here as he goes through a little bit of a dip into the toe. That concrete has a little bit of a change in grip levels, but you've got to follow it to make sure you get the right line out of that corner, which he has done. He's charging now towards the heel. Let's see what sort of lap time, sector time he can produce. He's 3 tenths up, so he's lost some time on Goofball's time.
Oh, and just drifted wide as well through the heel. Had to wait an eternity to get back on the throttle. His time in practice was a 42.1. He doesn't look like he's on target to beat that. Well, I say that, actually we're comparing that to Goofball Antics laps, so the Porsche will probably find a couple of tenths in that final sector, so it may well be close. We just got to keep it clean for these last couple of corners.
Huge amount of understeer through that corner, and he's cut inside of the track there.
Yeah, huge amount of grass there.
Had 2 wheels on the pavement, so it looks like he'll keep that lap time. He crosses the line, and it's first position by 5 tenths of a second. So he's made up a lot of time, and Berto is your pole sitter for this race.
Yeah, great job there from Berto. Pole position, It was a bit of a messy end to the lap, but the first sector was absolutely sublime, and he was basically just managing his delta from that point onwards. He knew that poles was his to lose from that point onwards, and he's going to be starting this race from first place with Goofball Antics, qualifying specialist, alongside him on the front row of the grid. So championship second place and championship fourth place occupying our front row of the grid.
Resist starting this race from third position on the grid. Great lap time for the BMW M1, and it'll be a good chance for Resist to get some more points on the board. Currently sitting 7th in the championship, looking to finish well. And now we have a 10-minute practice session before we get started for the race. So these guys will be getting out on the track, getting a feel for a little bit of last-minute race strategy. They may have got some feedback from that qualifying lap that they're trying to adjust for, and they will be making their practice starts as well.
Quick shout out to our viewers and those of you who've commented in the live chat. We've got Luce89, who we know as Lewis Wedding from Automobilista Australia, saying the banked high and medium speed corners of the Glen will make this season a favourite for the drivers. And I think the cars will love this track. Certainly agree with you there on that point, especially the Porsche drivers, of which unfortunately we only have 2 tonight, but it certainly opens the door for someone not driving a Porsche to get the podium. And Sue Smith, mother of Sam, even though her son is not racing tonight, still watching along. And thank you very much indeed for joining us. As there is no Sammy tonight, go Berto, she says. So still supporting the Black Schuppen Rennen team.
Fantastic to see Sue's wearing the pink pig colours tonight for Berto, and I reckon he's going to do very well. I'd say he's my prediction for the race win. Stairs, what do you reckon?
Hard to go against that prediction, quite honestly, because these... I mean, the only thing that can probably bring him unstuck is himself. I know we're heaping a lot of pressure on him and opening ourselves up for the commentator's curse, but Barbagallo was a racetrack where I just didn't think the Porsches would have that huge advantage. It's a small track, and the BMW 320s were able to no-stop. I don't think the BMW 320s are going to be able to make this without a pit stop, personally, so that puts their advantage somewhat on the back burner. They will have shorter pit stops because they don't use as much fuel, but they still will have to come in, I should think, unless we do have a lot of safety car interventions. So that puts the 935s at an advantage, and just the sheer number of straights and uphill bits and long, fast corners that this racetrack has plays into the hands of those driving the 935 as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. A lot of full throttle sections around this track means the BMW 320s, like all other cars, are going to be burning a lot more petrol per lap as they did in Barbagallo. So no stopper is almost going to be impossible around this circuit. Plus a little bit of tyre wear going through some of those sections, particularly the S's, where you're on full throttle or near enough to full throttle, trying to get as much power and momentum through that section as you can with the tyres absolutely screaming in pain.
The practice starts now, as we tend to have pretty much every warm-up lap, but starts very much in focus. A lot of discussion during the week after the start line accident in Barbagallo, and that was our second start line incident in 4 races, with the one between Xeris and Madbird in the opening race, and of course the disaster that we had at Barbagallo. A lot of guys struggling with getting these cars off the line, and perhaps practice required for some of them, just dumping the clutch or not dumping it, perhaps maybe just gently releasing it and getting these cars off the line quickly. It's a huge factor, and because if you do bog, there's a very good chance that someone who's got a much better start than you is going to go plowing into the back of you.
That's exactly right. There is a bit of space on both sides of the track to get around someone if they do bog it down, and there's a little bit of staggering between the cars as well, which helps also. But anything can happen, as we've seen, so the drivers will have to be especially careful.
This is a very, very long wait for this practice start here. There's a lot of revving as we're forced to compete with the engine noises, and they've got underway. Looks like very clean, apart from Resist with a bit of smoke coming out of his engine because he was sitting there revving it for such a long time. So that's the sort of thing that they'll be aiming to replicate in the race, and if they can, then hopefully it's a discussion that we won't have to have during the following week.
Just want to make mention of that fence on the exit of turn 1. just before the turn-in point for turn 2. We can't see it at the moment, of course, because the cars have proceeded all the way up the track. But the fence tapers in at a very dramatic angle towards the edges of the track where it finishes off. So if there's a little bit of a tangle at the exit of turn 1 on that concrete runoff and someone gets sent in that fence, it's going to be disastrous. They're going to spear off back onto the track as well and collect a lot of cars. As we have seen, for those of you who watch NASCAR races, of course, there have been a very hefty accidents in that part of the circuit. And that is where some of the start line chaos could be shifted to if it does happen.
Quite possibly. Well, we've got a time for a short break before race start. Just nearly 6 minutes left in this warm-up session. So we'll be back on the other side with all the action from the 5th round of the Apex Rear Wing DRM Championship. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, everyone, to Watkins Glen for the 5th round of the Apex Rear Wing DRM Championship. We've just had qualifying, which has been, I'd like to say, dominated by Berto, but it wasn't as big a gap as we might have expected, considering the gap that he had in practice. So a bit of a scrappy end to the lap for Berto, contributing to that, and a fantastic lap from Goofball Antics, who showed us his real pace in qualifying.
Yeah, and it'll be really interesting to see how these guys are able to keep the pace up over the race distance. Of course, the race does last for 55 minutes, or I think it's 50 minutes. I don't even remember at this point. Plus 1 lap. It's somewhere around that area of time.
Yeah, so right the first time, 55 plus 1.
55 plus 1. So, as I was touching on earlier, it's impossible to go around this circuit, we believe, without making a pit stop, no matter what car you're in. It's just a matter of how well you can manage your fuel and your tyres. Tyres haven't really been a huge talking point, though, throughout this season, have they, Stairs?
No, but I expect that they may well be here because we've got a lot of fast right-hand corners. Got a few fast left-hand corners as well, but being a clockwise circuit, predominant majority of the corners are right-handers, and a lot of them are very, very quick, especially the outer loop. And the toe being a banked corner places a fair premium on the tyres on the left-hand side of the car as well.
That's exactly right. I was just trying to find a car floating around the track that wasn't near the start line so I could hear what you were saying there.
Yeah.
Because when these cars rev up, they really do dominate the airwaves. Of course, being from the 80s, these machines are very loud and boisterous, and they make themselves known very readily to you.
Yeah, they're a bit like a screaming toddler sometimes, but one that I want to be around.
That's exactly right. Some of these cars sound sensational, and the beauty of the DRM series, you've got a wide variety, especially given it's a 70s and 80s championship of engine formats which you can run. We've got cars such as the Porsche 935 running a 6-cylinder engine, and I believe the BMW 320 to be running a straight 6, as BMWs typically do, but we've got some V12 action in the form of the BMW M1 as well. Not sure what's under the bonnet of the Ford Caprice, though. I want to say it's a V8, but I'm not 100% sure.
Well, American car, it's a good bet, V8, I would think. You're probably spot on the money there.
Well, can you really call the Ford Capri an American car? Sure, it's got the Detroit badge on the front of it as well, but Ford's presence in Europe was almost completely separate from what Ford was doing in the United States in terms of the cars they were producing. And the Capri being a very European vehicle, very, very different to what the Americans were producing, as I was saying earlier. The land yachts, as I like to refer to them. In comparison, the European Ford lineup, very tight, nimble handling. The Capri being no exception.
Yeah, it's a good middle of the road car, the Ford Capri, and I don't mean it drives in the middle of the road. I mean it's got a decent balance between handling and power, but unfortunately it does put it somewhere in no man's land from a strategy point of view, whereas we've seen the 320 get a few podiums and even a victory in this season by virtue of not having to make pit stops, as we see some of the guys making some practice pit entries. The Capris have just been a little bit off that. We did see Madbird make a no-stop strategy work in Belle Isle, but that was a bit fortuitous with the safety car and saving a fair bit of fuel. It doesn't seem to be anywhere near as likely to do that as it does in the 320.
Well, I've done a bit of my own research on the Ford Capri, and by research I mean trying to angle the camera under the bonnet of one of these cars, and I can confirm that these cars have an inline-4 engine. So displacement is quite down, especially in comparison to what the BMW M1 can produce with its V12 engine, but it's still able to hold its own very well.
Well, there you go. I did not know that. And that's siren you just heard was the end of the warm-up session, which means we're gridding up. We're not very far away from getting this race started here at Watkins Glen using the boot version of the circuit with the chicane.
It's going to be a fantastic race. Don't go anywhere, folks. If you're looking for some excellent on-track action, this is where you're going to see it tonight. We've seen already so far this season some great scraps coming from really unexpected places, and this race is going to be no exception. They're all getting ready to line up on the grid for their formation lap now. I think we've just got one more car in the pits, and that is Burdo.
He's waiting to the last possible moment to get on the grid. He doesn't want to waste a 1 milliliter of fuel sitting on the grid revving.
He's on the grid now. They're getting ready to take the green flag for the formation lap. They're away now, and let's have a look through the grid as it stands for this race. Burdo is on pole position with a 1 minute 42.308, followed by Goofball by a margin of just over 0.5 of a second. So great lap from Goofball there. Resist in the BMW M1 is third. I think that's his personal best qualifying so far this season. Correct me if I'm wrong, Stairs. Xeris, his brother, is fourth in the second of the BMW 320s. Madbird is fifth in the Ford Capri, next to Roadhog in sixth position. Great result for him in the Toyota Celica. Seventh is Nether, ahead of Pablo in the 00 numbered Ford Capri. Ninth is Greg Tara. 10th is Tyrrell, and I believe the rest of them line up in the order of Rhodey, Bang, Brenton Foley, and I think that is it. Yes.
That is it. Just 13 runners tonight with Sam Smith and Desamaj absent. And so it means if we've got everyone here, it's a grid of 15, which is nice to see, a big, healthy grid. And that means that there would be only enough points for everyone if everyone finished. But tonight, only 13. And it is, I can confirm, Resist's best qualifying session in this season. And I believe of his short Apex rear wing career, his best to this season so far is 5th place, which came in round 2 in Belle Isle. And that came unstuck at the start with a bit of contact with Nether going into turn 3, I believe it was. But he'll be hoping for a better start today, and he's well poised with a second row start, and that is very good to see from him. It was a very, very good lap from Resist, And if not for a fantastic lap from Goofball Antics, he might have found himself on the front row. He wasn't too far away.
We're all going to be hoping for a great start. They've seen what can happen if things go wrong in the first 4 races of this season so far, and it can really happen to anyone. Berto knows this more than the guys behind him, especially. Berto is starting from pole position, though, so he's got a little bit of an advantage there in terms of avoiding trouble off the launch.
Trouble is the trouble came from behind him last round, so he wants to launch. That's the main thing.
That's exactly right. He did bog that start down last time out in Barbagallo. I think he would have been practicing his launches from there on in. His practice starts were looking pretty good as well, so I'd hazard a guess and say it's going to be pretty clean from Berto. They're just rounding the final corner now and getting ready to retake their grid positions as they prepare to start this 55-minute plus 1 lap race. 5th race of DRM Season 8 of 10. So once we're finished here, we will have reached the midpoint of the season.
Unfortunately, not the most ideal camera position for the start of this race. We'll try and reposition it for you so that you can get a good idea of the launch and a very, very tightly packed grid. You can see how close behind Resist Madbird is. He'll be hoping Resist gets off the line, won't he?
Yeah, that's exactly right. What I was saying about the cars being spread out earlier was completely wrong. They're almost nose to tail on this grid.
Well, the trouble is you can't tell where the grid spots are because they normally do rolling starts here in America, but the lights are on. We're about to get going. And it's a bad start for Goofball Antics. He gets contact from behind, and so does Rhodey from Brenton Foley. So we've had another start line incident, but thankfully not from the front runners. It's Resist through into second place. Goofball Antics loses only 1 spot from bogging it on the line. Xerus got checked up behind and lost a number of spots, but the man leading is the guy from pole position for Black Schuppen-Ren, and it's Berto.
Very unfortunate to see for Rhodey there as he goes through turn... Oh, sorry, didn't even go through turn 1. He was tapped before he made it there, unfortunately. But the rest of the field is single file as they make their way onto the back stretch and run down towards the inner loop. Let's see if they can all keep it nice and steady on the brakes. Goofball, straight line, the chicane, almost rear-ended Resist there, and he's off onto the side of the track. He keeps 3rd position, but he's about to lose it to Roadhog, who goes up to 3rd. Yeah,
it's round the outside for Roadhog, down into the chute. He'll have the inside, and coming under a bit of pressure from Madbird, who's had a... Oh, I thought I was going to say he's made up a few spots, but he's actually where he started. A lot of cars going backwards and a lot of cars going forwards now as they all fight over the same piece of tarmac down through the toe. Goofball Antics, what a horror start from him. 2 spots down from where he started this race, but he's fighting back on Roadhog as they go down into the heel. He's got the inside line, and I don't think Roadhog sees that as his fight, so he's not going to fight Goofball Antics too far. So going back to where that all kicked off at the inner loop chicane, it's like Resist in that heavy M1 has to brake a lot harder and go through the corner a lot slower than Goofball Antics, as Goofball Antics is used to carrying almost a flat-out sort of speed through there, but Resist, very much a different approach.
That's exactly right. It's an often forgotten thing that you have to keep in mind when you're racing in fields of such different cars, how effective your opponents are under brakes. And those heavier cars are not going to be sensational at stopping as Berto runs wide off turn 1 and loses a little bit of time. He's still 3 seconds up after just 1 lap of this circuit, so he's already charging ahead as we thought was going to happen. But the BMW M1 and the Porsche 935 are the heaviest cars on the grid, so anyone sitting behind either of those 2 or either of those 4 vehicles looking to make a pass into a heavy braking zone, you'd have to be careful and maybe duck out a little bit early to make sure you don't inadvertently rear-end them.
It's the 2nd race in a row now where we only have 1 pink pig present because of Berto's DNF at the start of the previous race, but he will be looking to emulate what his teammate Sam Smith did in Barbagallo, try and clear out and dominate this race from the start. Just catching up on what happened to everyone else at the start. Nether had a good start, up 1 spot from where he started. Xerus, we saw him getting caught up behind the 320 of Goofball Antics on the start, and he's yet to recover any of those spots. Pablo is where he started in 8th place and on target for a good haul of points if he finishes where he is there. Tyrrell up 1 spot. Brenton Foley has made 3 spots after tagging Ben Rhodes at the start, so time will tell whether he gets investigated for that. One would think, given that that's been a topic in the spotlight lately, that it will be. Greg Tara, first race in Apex rear wing for him, down 2 spots from where he started in the underpowered BMW 320, and Bang has had an incident somewhere because he's 10 seconds behind that gaggle with Rhodey in 13th place all by himself.
So Burro's already pulled a gap of 5.5 seconds. We've only completed 2 laps of this race so far. So I think what we're going to see here, folks, today is indeed going to be the Birdo show. He's charging ahead. He's got so much power over the rest of this field, including that BMW M1. He's got 100 more horsepower or so, maybe a little bit closer to 50 more horsepower. I don't remember the exact gap between those two cars, but it's enough around a track like this to be able to pull such a significant margin so early on.
And almost into the 42s on his first flying lap of the race with presumably a full fuel load on board, 43.098. So that is a remarkable start to this race. And I'm sure he started as he means to continue.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how well he can keep that pace up and how that car behaves once the fuel tank starts to drain a little bit towards the end of this first stint. What sort of lap times he's going to be able to produce and whether that car is going to be stable through the S's, because we have heard of a couple of the cars, specifically the Ford Capri, not being able to keep a steady line on some of the other tracks with a light fuel load. Once those cars start to drain their tanks, things might get a little bit interesting.
So Resist is out on his lonesome in second place, running very, very well at the moment. He has about a 2-second advantage over Goofball Antics, who lost that spot to Resist at the start of the race and has yet to recover it. Roadhog's still holding down 4th place, but that appears to be the closest battle on the track right now, with Madbird and Nether both closing him down.
Just want to interrupt and say Roadhog had a little bit of a slippery moment on the exit of that turn that leads back onto the NASCAR circuit. So Madbird has caught very close up to the rear of Roadhog now. And as they run down to turn 1, I wouldn't be surprised if he has a look. He's already on the inside, or almost on the inside, as they go down the main straight. Yeah, he's going to go for that pass now. And Madbird, if he can get this done, will be up to 4th position. He's on the brakes, nice and tight to the apex. Great move.
Yeah, good move there. And he moves himself up into 4th place. Renegates Roadhog to 5th. The Roadhog's going to fight back if he can. It's pretty much single file through here, especially in these cars. Through the S's, it would take a very brave person to stuff it up the inside. He'll try and fight back. We've got a defensive move going on with Madbird moving to the inside as they head down to the chicane. It's all closing up with Xeris catching up in the background. Nether's going to factor into this very shortly indeed with the power of that Porsche 935 Turbo. He's catching up too. And Xeris trying to pick up the scraps. Now, someone's fallen down the order. I'm trying to see who it is, or is it a timing glitch? I think it might be a timing glitch. Well, Greg Tara's up to 9th. So that says to me that he's made up positions, because he was 2 positions down on where he started. Now he is where he started.
Well, Madbird and Roadhog both got their wheels in the dirt on the exit of the chute there. So
around the inside of the toe, and he'll have a good line as they go up towards the heel.
He certainly will, but Nether has the power, and he's going to pull ahead before they even make it there. Will Xeris have a lunge into the heel? I don't think he's going to. No, he's going to get back behind Nether, who runs it wide, and Xeris is going to get very close again. So this is a great battle between 2 completely opposite cars, and if Madbird keeps driving in 4th position as defensively as he is, this means that Xeris could also, well, Xeris and Nether effectively could be challenging for 4th position as well if they can catch up to the rear of those 2 cars in front of them. Because the more defensive that Madbird drives, the slower he's going to be, the slower he's going to make Roadhog as well. And the more these guys will be able to catch up. It's close now, but Nether's got the lead as they cross the line to start lap 5. And he'll be able to charge down and maintain his position as they go into turn 1.
Yeah, Nether's missing a few apexes here. He's struggling with that Porsche right now, and Xeris is all over him through the corners. But as soon as they get to part of the racetrack where they can open the taps a little bit, that 935 is just driving away. They're both dropping back a little bit now from Madbird and Roadhog. Madbird, I saw just having a little bit of a moment coming out of the S's, and they're now 7 seconds adrift of Goofball Antics, who's having a decent run now that he's got up to pace. In fact, Resist has had a moment, because that gap has come down significantly in the last few moments. Just see if I can see a replay, because it was 2 seconds. Now it's down to 0.8 of a second.
Yeah, it's a very narrow gap now. It's almost negligible as you see these cars and how close they're getting. It is back up to a second now, and it'll be interesting to see how close Goofball can get under normal racing conditions to the back of that BMW M1. Of course, Goofball put in a blistering lap time to be able to qualify that thing on second ahead of Resist. So this is going to shape up to be a very interesting battle as we see Xeris try to go around the outside of Nether.
Almost all 4 wheels on the grass there. That didn't work.
Yeah, very hairy move there from Xeris, but he's still on the back of Nether, so it's very promising for Xeris and his prospects in making his way up the field. And speaking of making their way up the field, Brenton Foley's up to 8th, 5 positions from where he started from plumb last on the grid, so he's having a great charge at the moment.
5 spots up from where he started this race. After binning it in his qualifying lap, it can only go up from there. Now, Greg Tara's had an issue because I mentioned before that he got up to where he started, having dropped back a few spots. He's now re-dropped those spots. So still coming to grips with these DRMs. Everyone else here has got the benefit of 4 races of experience in these cars. And Greg Tara is getting up to speed now. So a bit of a baptism of fire. His first races in Apex Rear Wing coming in these ridiculous 1970s/80s beasts from Germany.
I think Greg Tara's had an incident somewhere along this circuit. I'm looking at his car now, and he's got a little bit of a dent in the rear and a huge dent on the right-hand side. So I'd say he's spun and possibly even been collected by someone in the process. Everyone is still running, though. We've got 13 cars on track at the moment. Rody is currently 2 whole minutes behind Birdo, which means that Birdo must be very close to catching him now. On only the 6th lap of this race, they're just going through the toe now, and Birdo will be on the back of Rody very, very soon.
Yeah, 1 minute 40 is the gap currently, and we know that Birdo's lapping in around about a 1 minute 42, so I expect we'll see... There he is, Rody in
just
shot.
pulled over to the side of the track now, got the blue flags, and he's pulled off. Great job.
Yeah, he's hoping for some attrition now. He'll get some points for finishing this race if he remains within 75% of Birdo's lap times, or as far as laps completed. And he'll get the 3 points for finishing in 13th if he keeps it on the road. And if anyone else drops out of the race, he'll get more points as a result of that. But it's just unfortunate. He was completely not at fault for what happened at the start. Maybe he bogged it down a little bit. He got rear-ended, and it's just one of those things. But it certainly will be discussed given what happened last week. As it is something that is in the spotlight.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's starting to become a bit of a recurring thing, which is not normally what we like to see. And bringing these cars home in one piece is the name of the game. I'm just having a look at what happened to Greg Tara earlier in the race, and he just got a little bit sideways all on his own on the lead into the final corner and slapped the tyre barrier on the outside. So completely self-inflicted, which is unfortunate to see, and he's still getting to grips with how that car behaves. This being his first race, I believe, in Apex Rear Wing.
That's right. We did a practice session, or warm-up session, in Barbagallo, but that was about it. The technical issues were getting in the way for him. It looks like Madbird's broken away from Roadhog, who seems to be struggling a little bit at the moment, and Nether and Xeris catching up a little bit. So I wonder if Xeris is hoping that Nether will catch Roadhog, might be able to take advantage of an opportunistic move somewhere mid-corner and try and break free of those two. Time will tell. Resist and Goofball Antics are still in the same positions that they were last time we caught up with them. But Goofball Antics applying the pressure to second place man Resist at the moment.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Potentially trying to force him into a mistake or an error of some description, or maybe even just forcing him to take lines would not be ideal for preservation of fuel and tyres. Obviously, the BMW M1, being such a heavy drinker of petrol, is going to pit before the BMW 320 needs to. So Goofball has the opportunity to leapfrog him out of the pits if he can't get this pass done on the track. But he's very close now. The gap's only 0.7 of a second or thereabouts as they make the run down to turn 1. So those two are definitely staying in touch with each other as Madbird comes across the line, or sorry, not comes across the line, comes through turn 4 now. And they're getting a bit dicey for Nether and Xeris here on the run into turn 1. I think the lap traffic caught them out a little bit. Xeris has a big lunge into turn 1, and he's got the job done so far, but let's see how long he can keep that up for.
Nether's going to switch back for the inside of turn 2, but he doesn't have enough road to do so, and now they go through the S's, and Nether's job here is to try and stay as close as he possibly can to the back end of that BMW 320 and try and out-drag him down the back straight. And Xeris will be cursing this long back straight. He's immediately moved to the inside to try and defend the line, but he does have a bit of margin. Tried to move back to the racing line, but then saw how close Nether was and then went back to the inside. But now he may well be clear. He's going to try and break away from Nether, not be within striking distance. That was a great move from Xeris.
And the gap now from Xeris to Roadhog is only 1.2 seconds or thereabouts as they go through the chute and a few of these last bends. Big moment of understeer there for Nether, so he's losing time off Xerus as well. It'll be interesting to see if Nether can keep in touch with this battle for 5th position as Madbird streaks away in 4th. Meanwhile, up in 2nd position, Resist is only 4 tenths ahead of Goofball, so Goofball's getting very close. And I'm not sure if they've been making any challenges for positions here, but keep an eye on these guys.
Yeah, fastest lap of the race for Goofball Antics, about 3 tenths faster than that of Resist. So that's the sort of advantage that he seems to have over the BMW M1 drivers, but he will have to make a pit stop at some stage, we think, but the M1 is likely to have to make a longer pit stop, being such a heavy drinker of fuel, as you said. So there is a good chance for Goofball Antics to make the jump in the pit stop. Back on Xerus, though, he's got the hard part done. Potentially, Roadhog should be a bit easier to pass than Nether because the Celica doesn't have the top speed advantage that Porsche does. So that is probably going to be a bit of comfort for Xerus, but he's still got to get the job done, and it's going to take all of his skill under brakes to do so.
That's absolutely right. He's going to gain a little bit of time through this S's section, and the margin is still 1.2 seconds. It was as close as 8 tenths earlier in the lap, as Roadhog must have made a slight error somewhere before pulling away again. And this backstretch is really where Roadhog can sort of stretch the legs of that Toyota Celica and pull away from Xerus in the BMW 320. But this second sector, as Roadhog has a little bit of a slide through the outer loop, is where Xerus is going to be able to catch up. So keep your eyes on that pair as they go through there. Meanwhile, if you look at the front, it looks like Resist is still ahead. The gap's gone down to a second between himself and Goofball Antics. So that's staying pretty steady between those two. And at the front, Birdo is leading by 14 seconds. So he's just starting to slow down a little bit, not charge ahead too much and not take too many risks, as you don't really need to do when you're leading by such a massive margin. Oh,
it's a great feeling, but I mean, even in the small number of races that I won in Apex Rear Wing, and I didn't win many by more than 10 seconds, with that sort of gap, you still want to break free. You know, one spin and that gap is immediately eradicated. So you're absolutely concentrating. You're not going as fast as you possibly can. Oh, up on 2 wheels on the inside curb. Those are the sorts of things that put your heart in your mouth when you're leading the race. But he's built that margin, and so he's got that cushion. And he'll definitely know not to do that again.
Big Parker moment through turn 1 for Birdo. That would have unsettled his rhythm going through the S's, but he's kept it nice and tidy. And the gap's now up to 20 seconds as he hits the end of the back straight, simply due to the power that the Porsche 935 is able to produce. But some of these curves are a little bit risky. Not as bad as we saw at Barbagallo and some of the other tracks. They're not that aggressive. But I have seen on a couple of occasions throughout the sessions that we've seen here today, Porsche 935 is getting up on 2 wheels. So that's something that Birdo and Nether will have to be careful of.
So battle on track now, 2nd and 3rd. Looks to be the closest at the moment. Second only to, well, probably Roadhog and Xerus, about a second separating them at the moment. So that's the second closest battle on track. So we'll stick with Resist and Goofball Antics for the time being, as Goofball Antics gets all out of shape. Coming out of, where are they actually up to? That was out of the chute, I believe, as they come now.
They're going through the toe now.
And a very, very wide line for Resist. And that's given Goofball Antics a very good opportunity. If he can duck out of the slipstream, he's going to run out of power in that BMW 320. That was a very, very good opportunity. I think, though, he's going to play the patience game. The gap that Birdo has in front of them is the same as the gap that they have over Madbird behind them. So they're very, very safe in 2nd and 3rd right now. And Goofball Antics looks set to consolidate, well, not consolidate, retake, rather, the championship lead if he finishes where he is now. And he is well placed strategically to leapfrog Resist into 2nd, which would be invaluable for him.
Yeah, Resist is going to try and pull away on the run down into turn 1. We've got a drive-through penalty for Rody, and I imagine that is as a result of speeding in the pit lane. Yes, it is.
Yeah, he's just coming out of the pits, as you can see, and paying not the blindest bit of notice to the pit exit line, but it wasn't something that was discussed, so it doesn't necessarily matter. But presumably he would have looked at his mini-map to see if there was anyone coming through, and would have seen that the leaders had in fact gone past by the time that he exited the pit lane. So that now puts him 2 laps down. So I think he would have come in to repair damage by the looks of it, if he's coming in that early.
We've got Bang in the pits as well, though, so maybe those guys... Oh, he has... has he DNF'd?
Yes, he says DNF, so I'm not sure what's happened to Bang. I'll try and catch a replay. No, that has happened too long ago for us to catch. So, because this racetrack doesn't have the garages, they just, when they DNF, they end up in the pit box. So that's why he's back there. But that's a position for Rody potentially to pick up if he continues in this race, and there's points on offer for him.
Just caught a big moment there.
Sorry, Goofball Antics going down the inside, I believe, at the toe, and goes very, very wide on the exit, which is going to allow Resist to come back up the outside. Sorry, not at the toe. That was at the outer loop. As
no, that was the heel.
That was the heel. Getting my parts of the track completely mixed up. So that was a very, very close maneuver. Goofball Antics nearly had the position, but just outbroke himself a little bit. Resist comes back at him and retakes the place. Now, Xerus, meanwhile, has made his way up ahead of Roadhog for 5th place. That's happened a little while ago, so we didn't catch what happened there. So he's now catching Madbird.
He's got a margin of 1.6 seconds to Madbird at the moment, as we have Rody pulling into the pits now to save his drive-through penalty. And Xerus, given the pace that he's had so far in this race, he's going to be catching Madbird pretty soon, I would say, in that Ford Capri. And as we were talking earlier about those pit stops, I think Greg Tara had a big moment at the final corner. He got these wheels in the grass, and he jumped on the brakes. He rotated at 360 degrees at that corner, which has very little runoff. It was quite some time ago. It would have been 2 or 3 laps ago now. He was able to keep it off the fence, but he's still getting comfortable with this BMW 320.
Yeah, it's an achievement to finish a race in these cars, so I think he'll be happy if he does that and collects points, and he'll go on from there. Interesting track we're going to next week. It's the Montreal Classic version of the racetrack, which has a terrifying fast left-right kink. Ooh, is it left-right or right-left? Regardless, it's a very, 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 very fast kink chicane down the back straight, which in these cars I think will be a bit of a widowmaker, quite frankly.
I think you might be right. Not sure if these cars ever had the opportunity to race that track, but they were from the same time period, so keeping it nice and timely is always good to see. Watkins Glen, meanwhile, is a completely timeless layout. It's one of those tracks that was sort of laid down the way it was back in the day and sort of stayed relatively unchanged. Oh, big moment from Goofball. Gets the back end out on the exit of the final corner. It was so close to spearing into the inside wall on the main straight. He keeps it together, but the margin's now down to 0.8 of a second. He'll be able to make that up eventually, but that's not a moment you want to be repeating to any time soon. Very hairy there from Goofball.
Yeah, that was a brown trouser moment out of the final corner. He's really, really quite pushing to put Resist under pressure for this second place. He doesn't really need to take too many risks, but, well, we certainly appreciate that he is trying very, very hard to overtake Resist for that second place position.
Yeah, the amount of time he spent on the backstretch would have given him a good period of time to reach down between the crack and the seat and find some change for the laundromat for those trousers, because he's definitely going to need it as we look back now towards Madbird and Xerus, and that margin is getting quite close as well. It's just down to under a second as they make their way through the inner loop. So
yeah, 0.6 of a second Xerus took out of Madbird on the previous lap, so he's up the wick, and he's putting Madbird on a significant amount of pressure right now.
So that's going to be very dicey in the next coming laps. So keep that in your mind, as Roadhog is in 6th position by a gap of 2.5 seconds. So he's falling off the back of them quite rapidly.
Yeah, Foley's catching him at the moment.
As is Nether, who is very far back with Foley catching him. Yes, with a gap of about 3 seconds between Foley, who is 5 spots up from where he started at the back of the grid, and looking to make some pace up if he can keep his nose clean and out of the fence, as Roadhog falls off the track there as well. I'm just pacing through the cars at the moment. So
Yep.
12 runners at the moment. Rody is the last on circuit, lapped down from everybody. He has been lapped by the entire field so far, so he's just pacing around at the moment, trying to finish the race and take some points home.
Bit of a battle in prospect for 9th, 10th and 11th. They're about 2 or 3 seconds apart at the moment, but Pablo looks like he will catch Tyrrell at the pace that he's going, and Greg Tara may well catch the back of both of those two to make it a good 9-car battle. Tyrrell and Pablo having a fantastic battle in Barbagallo towards the closing stages, but now Madbird going to the inside of the racetrack to defend position from Xerus, who's going to try around the outside of turn 1, and Madbird gets all crossed up on the apex of turn 1, and that allows Xerus up along the outside. There's no way through there because Xerus did not have a car's width to get through there, and they're absolutely nose to tail as they go through the S's. Unfortunately for Xeris, he's going to come up to the back straight where he's going to be found lacking in terms of top speed, but he's putting Madbird under all sorts of pressure right now.
Bouncing off the rev limiter the whole way down the back straight means he's not able to stay on the back of Madbird as much as he would have liked to with the draft. So Xeris, unfortunately, still sitting in 5th position, 1 place down from where he started this race. But as it looks at the moment, he's going to be making that pass very, very soon, especially as they come into this boot section where the BMW 320 really shines.
Yeah, Madbird's got to close down all those apexes and not allow any opportunity for Xeris to get past. But with these bank corners...
Sorry, got to interrupt. Goofball Antics was up to 2nd very briefly there, but he's had a big run off the track. He's back down to 3rd, but he had made the pass stick, but now the gap between Resist and Goofball is 2 seconds. Big mistake from Goofball Antics there.
So he's gone for it. We're looking at the replay now. He was up the inside. I believe that was at the heel. And very similar to what we saw earlier on, just trying to outbrake him, and adhesion was not there for him. So he's got it all to do. Meanwhile, while we were watching that, Madbird has managed to keep Xeris behind him. And as I was saying before, he just needs to close off all of those apexes to Xeris, but with the bank corners, it gives you multiple opportunities around some of these corners, and that's what Xeris will be banking on. While we were talking, Roadhog got him, Roadie got himself another penalty, and trying to see where he is on track. Was that for speeding in the pit lane too?
He's not near the pit, so potentially that could be for track cut violations.
All right, so he's trying for the full set of penalties. The other one you could possibly get is a stop-go for a restart infringement behind the safety car, but we would have to have a safety car for that to be the case. And so far, it's been a reasonably clean race.
That's exactly right, but with the amount of runoff or the lack of runoff on some of these parts of the track, a safety car is very likely depending on where a car goes off and becomes immobilized. Xeris is all over the back of Madbird, though. Has a look through the outer loop, and that was very close to being a sure thing.
Yeah, Madbird closed the inside, and Xeris recognized that wasn't happening. Not close enough through the chute, and Madbird is driving a very, very wide Capri right now. He doesn't have to defend too far. He's just keeping it on those apexes, and the Ford Capri's engine is just powering it out of those scenarios for him right now with the BMW 320 that Xeris tries now to drive around the outside of the toe, but Madbird was there before him and closed off.
He's having a look on the inside. He's almost going to have another look into the heel, but he thinks better of it, and he's going to stay behind him in 5th. Sorry to butt into you there. I thought there was going to be a move for 4th position, but Xeris sticks in 5th at the moment, bides his time just a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think they'll both be enjoying this battle. Madbird probably less so because he's the one being attacked for the position. Xeris is the one trying to attack for the position. But I think they would both recognize right now that the podium is looking unlikely right now unless there's a DNF from one of the guys ahead of them.
Speaking of the podium, it's very close between Resist and Goofball. He's able to make that time back up, and the margin is about 6/10 as they go through the fast S's. But as close as 2/10 through turn 1 as Rody gets another drive-through penalty for what I assume is speeding in the pit lane as he took his 3rd drive-through penalty.
Yeah, that compounds things when you serve a penalty and speed while you're serving it, because it makes you get another one. So that's not too good. Very, very close for Goofball Antics going into the chute, but not close enough to have a look, it would appear. And now we've got Madbird on the inside. Xeris trying to go around the outside, but there's no way through there as they go through the inner loop chicane. Very, very close now. Xeris is going to try to drive around the inside. Well, the thing is, he's waiting for that door on the inside to open. It will open if Madbird has the slightest touch of oversteer going in there, but so far he's looked pretty planted through that corner, and Xeris has to wait for another opportunity as they go down once more with Madbird on the inside defending as they go through the toe. Xeris will try and get a run, but it's an uphill stretch. It very much is playing out against him. This is a good run, though. He's going to get up alongside as they go down to the heel. He's going to have the outside. It's going to be very, very difficult to make the move through there. Madbird doing a commendable effort right now to keep Xeris behind him. He closes off that route, and Xeris, I thought he was going to have a dive. What is going on, Rody? You've got to get it down to 40, or I don't actually know what the pit lane speed limit is here, but he's managed to get himself another penalty. It may well be for extra cut.
For getting out of the way of lap traffic. So big middle finger from Rody to the race stewards, and it's great to see that tenacity from him as we look back towards these battles for 2nd and for 4th.
Well, the
They're
trouble,
very
sorry to butt in there, but the trouble with the track cuts is once you get that penalty for a drive-through penalty for cutting the track, as Roadhog in the background goes into the pit lane, any subsequent cutting of the track will net you another drive-through penalty.
That would explain why he's had so many of the things. He's trying to get out of the way of the cars coming up behind him. Oh, a little bit sideways for Madbird through the S's. So Xeris is all over the back of him. Takes the outside line as they make the way into the back straight. Gets very close to the outside wall. They're side by side. Xeris is technically ahead as they go into the inner loop. But Madbird has the inside line, and he will keep it together. It's still side by side. This is unbelievable. I think Xeris is going to get the job done, but Madbird is still there. No, Xeris is ahead. Xeris takes 4th position. Great scrap.
Yeah, that was fantastic racing from them, both giving each other the room as they went into the inner loop chicane. It was Madbird with the inside, but of course then the circuit goes the other way, which gives Xeris the inside.
Sorry to butt in, but Goofball's making a lunge on Resist into 2nd place at the same spot he attempted earlier, but this time he's got it stuck down. Didn't run wide, and he's kept the position. He's going to have to drive the most defensive race of his life. So, 2 changes for the lead. 2 BMW 320s making their way up into respective positions there. Goofball is now sitting in 2nd position ahead of Resist, and there's a gap of 23 seconds back to the 2nd battle where Xeris has just recently trumped Madbird. So a lot of movement in the mid to front pack of this race.
Textbook move there from Goofball Antics. He had 2 rehearsals of it, and he got it done on the 3rd opportunity, and Resist has now taken this opportunity to come in to make his pit stop on lap 17.
So Goofball's got clear air now in front and behind him. The closest gap he has so far to anyone is Xeris, who's 26 seconds behind him on track, and Birdo ahead is 32 seconds. So no real need for him to focus on battles, as Madbird has the exact same idea. He's pulled into the pits as well,
and
letting
so
Xeris...
so too Brenton Foley.
Brenton Foley having a great run so far, having made it all the way up to 6th position, 7 spots up from where he started, as he pulls into the pits now, just as Resist departs his pit box. So not a huge amount of fuel being taken on by Resist there. He's looking to, I'd say, make it all the way to the end of the race on dregs, on fumes from that tank. Let's see how he can manage it. But at the moment, it is Birdo who leads this race, having yet to take a stop, as he comes onto the back of Nether, who is about to be lapped by Birdo there. Goofball in 2nd and Xeris in 3rd, with those 2 yet to make stops, as Resist rejoins the track in 4th position. Madbird is leaving the pit box now, and so too is Brenton Foley. So those 2 will be 5th and 6th, respectively. As I say that, Roadhog now flies past the pit lane, and he'll be making up at least 1 position.
Madbird coming out. So Tyrrell also made a pit stop in all that, dropped down to 11th place, and that's why he's no longer close to Greg Tara and Pablo on track. Now, did Nether make a pit stop? I didn't see one, but it'd probably be the only reason why he would be that far down, unless he's had an off-track excursion somewhere.
His car looks to be okay, so I would say that the most likely thing that's happened there is he has taken a pit stop.
So, Birdo's in the pits. So, race leader is in the pits. And, well, he's not a race leader anymore. He's down into 2nd place, if I can find him. There he is. So, Goofball Antics has gone through into the lead. Time will tell when he comes into the pits. We don't think he can do this on 1 stop, or on no stops. It's a long stop for Birdo.
It certainly is, and Xeris has taken advantage of it as well, putting Birdo down to provisional 3rd, with Xeris making his way up the field before he makes his pit stop as well. Birdo's just leaving his pit box now, so it was a very long stop there for the Pink Pig Porsche racer, and Resist is a little bit further back in 4th position, not able to challenge Birdo. There's a margin of about 15 seconds between those 2.
Yeah, so Resist will come down the straight a lot closer, it has to be said, though, to Birdo than he was before the pit stop. So that is very interesting. Did Birdo repair any damage? What is the gap?
Not very sure what happened there, actually. It was a it was a very long pit stop.
12,
but I want to believe...
12 seconds currently between them, and it was at least, I want to say 40 seconds or something like that. They were battling... Sorry, not 40 seconds. Actually, no, that's about right. I'm thinking of the wrong battle. They were battling over 2nd, 3rd. It was about 20 seconds, though, so it has come down a bit.
So many battles happening on track, it's hard to keep tabs on what's happening. As we do have a 2nd DNF now, unfortunately, Greg Tara has pulled into the pits and it's tied, so it is a great shame. So we now have 11 cars running on track.
So that means that if Rhodey does finish this race, he will get at least 5 points for finishing in 11th place. As Xerus has an almighty moment. Where is that? Coming into the penultimate corner by the looks of it. So out of the heel. Out of turn 9. So all by himself. He's absolutely pushing right now. And with potentially shorter pit stop that he has to make in this race compared to Madbird, who he was battling. He's trying to make a bit of margin before he comes in for that pit stop.
News to Goofball as he is. The margin between those two now is just over 30 seconds. So that's a little bit more of a gap that Goofball will have over Xerus by the time everyone's taken their stops.
This is the part of the race where I search out to see if Heath Dixon is streaming this race to try and spy on his fuel numbers.
And how's that going for you, Stairs?
Just a brief glance at it suggests that I don't think he's going to be able to make it.
No, I wouldn't have imagined so either. It is, as I was saying earlier, a very full throttle heavy circuit, and with the tyre wear through the fast corners as well, you almost certainly have to take a pit stop in whatever piece of machinery
Yeah,
you choose.
maximum of 7 laps remaining, I believe, in his tank right now, and with 20 minutes left in this race, he's going to fall short. But that's going to be a short pit stop. He won't have to put too much fuel in, and that is the advantage again. So his gap over Berto is 40 seconds. It's not going to be a very, very long pit stop, I would have thought.
No, as long as he gets his calculations right. We have seen a couple of errors being made where cars have been dangerously close to running out of fuel because the fuel numbers were calculated a lap out of whack. So they had to trundle around the circuit to make it back to the line to take some points home. But as long as those numbers are right, they can take very short pit stops in the later stages of this race with just under 20 minutes to go now and run home with light fuel loads, which would mean faster lap times and, of course, less time spent in the pits.
So we're just waiting for the 2 BMW 320s out front to make their pit stops before this race shakes itself out in an order that's somewhat similar to what we are expecting to see at the end of the race. So Goofball Antics and Xerus are those 2 BMW 320s. 23 seconds between Goof and Xerus. Xerus once again being beaten by his BMW 320 compatriot, which he won't be too fond of. But of course, he had a lot of work to do early on to recover positions. Berto is the effective race leader, we believe. He was leading quite comfortably before the round of pit stops, and he came out in 3rd place, 40 seconds adrift of Goofball Antics, and closing that margin down fairly quickly. Resist was battling with Xerus prior to... Sorry, not with Xerus, with Goofball Antics prior to the pit stops, and was just passed before he made his pit stop. And same can be said of Madbird, who was battling with Xerus prior to his pit stop. Now, the interesting thing here is that Roadhog has managed to overtake Madbird. Now, did that happen in the pit stops, or did that happen on track afterwards?
Not entirely sure how that happened, actually, but the result is that Roadhog is currently ahead of Madbird. So I'm not sure when he took that stop or what exactly happened there, but there's a very dicey battle in the interim period before those 2 BMW 320s take their pit stops and shake things back up again.
Yeah, good.
And as I say, that Goofball Antics is in the pits now.
All right, so he's elected to take his pit stop now, and the car ahead of him is Greg Turris, who's retired from the race, so he's not stopping. It's just...
Xerus is not stopping either. Xerus has just gone past, aiming to get one more lap out of his fuel. So let's see if this pays off for him.
Well, I think Goofball Antics could quite possibly have gone another 5 or so laps. He's just elected to make the stop now. So maybe he wanted fresher tyres to the end of the race. Probably makes sense. If you have to stop anyway, stop earlier so that you get the benefit of those fresher tyres for a bit longer.
That's very true. That's very true. And of course, not very sure how these tyres are holding up so far. We can't really see any tyre numbers on any of these guys. Very limited information we get on the broadcast screen itself. Pretty much only lap times and positions.
Well, he's come out 8 seconds ahead of Resist, who he was battling. So that's probably goes to show how much quicker that pit stop was.
Yeah, absolutely. As we were saying earlier, those cars can take a lot shorter pit stops because there's less fuel they have to take on board. So once Xerus takes his stop, he'll have even less to take on. His tyres won't be up to scratch, but the difference in the pit stop time and the lightness of the car may be worth it.
And how close he will be to Resist, that's interesting. I expect him to be behind to start with, but maybe he'll be able to close in with fresher tyres, with Resist having pit on lap 18. Only 4 laps, but it will make a difference. Right now, Xeris is lapping around about 45s, mid-45s, and Resist 43. So he's losing margin to his brother right now. And one would expect that... given the pace that Resist had before the pit stops, he will continue to do so after the pit stops. But the shorter pit stop for the BMW 320 will be key. Here he comes,
and
race leader in the pits.
Now.
Yeah.
So let's see how short this is. It's going to be pretty rapid, as we have discussed earlier. And in 10 seconds' time, Birdo will be coming around the final bend to take the lead of the race, as we expected. And he just crosses the line now. And he retakes the lead with a lap time of 1 minute 43.283. So he's still not going particularly fast.
There goes Goof.
Of course, haven't taken on a lot of petrol, so Goofball Antics is up back into second as well, with Tyrrell behind him in the form of lap traffic. So Resist goes into third as well. Xeris is still in his pit box, and the next car to come will be Roadhog, who is currently 30 seconds behind. So it looks like Xeris will make his way back into 4th position.
He's still stationary. It's going to be... He wants to get moving fairly quickly, because... Won't be too much longer, about 10 seconds before we start to see Roadhog appear in that shot, but he's now on the move, and I don't think third place is a possibility for him now. That is a big margin, as we've got Roadhog and Madbird taking turn 1 now, and Xeris is going to lose positions to both of them, so he's got it all to do. What happened to Xeris? Did he miscalculate? Did he put too much fuel in?
It was an incredibly long pit stop, and if you have a look on the right-hand side of Xeris' car, he's got a big dent. So I'd say there was a collision for him earlier in the race that gave him a little bit of damage, not a huge amount, but enough that he may have forgot to turn the damage repair off when he took that pit stop. And as a result, he's been held for way longer than he ever wanted to or needed to.
That's bad news for Xeris, but it's good news for us, because we got ourselves a tasty old battle in prospect for the remaining quarter hour of this race, because Madbird is closing in on Roadhog. Xeris potentially closing in on both of them, and Brenton Foley in the back of shot is closing in on all 3 of them. Here we go. Madbird up the inside as they go up towards the toe. It's going to be Roadhog who has the inside line as they go absolutely side by side up the hill and around the banking, and it's Toyota Celica versus Ford Capri as Madbird gets all out of shape on the exit. Xeris buys into it behind them. Has a good run, but absolutely nowhere to go. And the inside line for Roadhog in the Celica. Madbird drives around the outside. That'll give him the inside for the next corner, which is turn 9. And what a great little piece of battling that was. Xeris is really in the contention to get 2 positions here.
Fantastic driving from Madbird through the heel and the toe of this circuit. Had that car absolutely on the limit around the outside of the toe, trying to get around Madbird, and he was able to stick on as Roadhog has a big lockup in the final corner and nearly touches the back end of Madbird. That's going to cost him, and Xeris is all over the back now, trying to have a look around the outside. No, he's going to dart to the inside, but Roadhog is very defensive into turn 1. Too defensive. He's shot wide, and Xeris has taken that spot from him.
He was so close to taking Madbird out of the race there. It was a defensive move that almost turned into a snorkels-on dive. And now we've got Brenton Foley in behind thinking, I can get 3 positions here. He's been absolutely nowhere on the broadcast for most of this race. And now he's in behind there in 7th, but he could be 4th if things go his way. Right now, though, it's Madbird ahead of Xeris, Roadhog, and Brenton Foley in behind him.
Been a faultless race so far for Brenton Foley, which has been fantastic to see. Refreshing change for him, and certainly he'll be feeling the exact same way as well. He's now all over the back of Roadhog, been looking to pile some pressure on, as he has been doing in the last season of ARW, where he was challenging for race wins most of the time with Xeris, and was a master at putting that pressure on. And speaking of putting on pressure, Xeris is sitting right behind Madbird, looking to take 4th position from him and resume that battle they had earlier.
Yeah, well, they had a fantastic battle early on before the pit stops, and Xeris got by. I don't think Madbird did anything particularly wrong in that battle. It's just that Xeris had enough pace to get up alongside, and it was just pure luck as to which corner came next, a left-hander or a right-hander, that Madbird lost out. He did a very good job of keeping Xeris behind him for a number of laps, as we now have Roadhog coming under some pressure from Brenton Foley, who drives around the outside of him at turn 9. And a little bit of a look from Xeris as well into the penultimate corner, but he backs out of that one. He's trying for a good run out of turn 10. That Ford Capri, turn 11, I should say, which is the final corner. Ford Capri has the legs on the BMW 320 down the straight, but the slipstream will be effective. Is he close enough for a dive into turn 1? He thinks better of that one, and this battle's going to rage on.
The legs on the Ford Capri also plays into the hands of Brenton Foley.
Oh.
Has a big moment on the exit of
And
turn
he got a
1.
drive-through for it. That was track cutting according to the game. He was on his limit.
No, that's so unfortunate. I'm used to seeing drive-through penalty and just associating it with roadie. But for now, it's Brenton Foley. This is a big moment ahead of him with Xeris being driven all the way to the outside wall by Madbird. So really dicey stuff there. There's probably some heated words between them as well, as Xeris is driving as aggressively as possible through the inner loop, trying to get ahead of him as well, trying to carve an inside line through the outer loop, but Madbird is still there in 4th position. But this battle is far from over. As far as Brenton Foley's concerned, the battle is over because he will have to take a drive-through penalty and he will be out of the contention for 4th position, which is very unfortunate for him.
Yeah, it may well cost him a place there, or at least a place to Roadhog. Could cost him 8th place to Nether as well. As we've got now Xeris up the inside as they come out of the toe. He'll have the inside. Got a better run out of there than Madbird did. And that is Xeris into 4th place because he's well ahead before they get down to the heel. And a great job, almost without us noticing, makes the position on Madbird.
Very cleanly ahead of Madbird there, was able to slot back in front of him and take the fast line through that corner without losing any time at all. So great drive from Xeris there on the exit of that corner, but Madbird is going to be all over the back of him now.
I don't know if Birdo's just managing his pace or anything, but with 10 minutes to go, there's only 5 seconds between himself and Goofball Antics, and that gap hasn't changed much since the last time I looked at it.
No, it's been very slight between those two. When they came out of the pits, the gap was about 8 or 9 seconds, and at the moment it's gone all the way down to 6.2 seconds.
Oh, huge near crash there for Madbird. Was very, very close to crashing into the back of Xeris. He was fighting back, trying to retake Xeris for 4th place. Got it all locked up at the fronts. He's going to have a horrendous flat spot. That thing's going to be thumping down the straight going... And Brenton Foley in behind him. He doesn't have to worry about him because he's got a drive-through penalty. I think Madbird's now just happy to bring it home in 5th place.
Huge moment there from Madbird. And with the tyres in that state, it's going to be very difficult to get that thing around this track, of course. But the end result of that is that Xeris has a gap of 2.1 seconds now on Madbird. So he's got some pretty clear air ahead of him, and he'll be looking to take as much advantage of it as he possibly can. Staying in that 4th position, he won't be able to do much more than that, unfortunately, with the gaps in front of him. We've got Resist 43 seconds ahead of Xeris in 3rd, and ahead of Goofball Antics by ahead of Resist by a margin of about 21 seconds is Goofball Antics.
This is a good race for Madbird, even though we've just watched him make a big mistake and get passed by Xeris twice, but he's finished 8th in the previous 2 races. They came off the back of a good start to the season, finishing 4th and 2nd. But he seems to be back on form today, and 5th place is nothing to be ashamed of. Get a very, very good haul of points and consolidate his position in the championship, which is currently 3rd. And I say consolidate, he will lose 3rd to Berto with this race because Berto was 1 point behind him.
I think Brenton Foley's got a second drive-through penalty for cutting the corner on the penultimate, for the second last bend. He ran too wide. And if he's accumulated a second penalty there, that's going to be absolute hell for his chances of getting a good result.
Yeah, well, he will lose that place to Nether now and potentially Tyrrell and Pablo. Don't know how far a lap down they are, but that is very, very bad news for Brenton Foley. Now, the last thing he wants to do right now is get a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Doesn't appear as though he's done so. So he's cleared the first penalty. He's still got the second one to do, which he's picked up on the entry to the pits to serve the first penalty. So that is just drastically bad luck there for Xeris. Let's watch our race leader, Berto. He leads by 5.3 seconds. I feel like he's just managing the pace. He doesn't seem to have a problem. The car looks fantastic. Drive-through penalty for Brenton Foley. He's the new roadie in this race.
He really is. He's taken the mantle away from that car number 010 of Rody, who was all over those drive-through penalties earlier and is 3 laps down as a result. But now Brenton Foley's race is really falling apart, which is a real shame to see. But speaking of races that are falling apart, here's one that's not. Birdo is currently leading by 10 seconds, so he's just stretching the legs a little bit, having a little bit of fun now with 6.5 minutes to go in this race. It doesn't look like Goofball's going to be able to challenge at all unless Birdo makes a mistake. He may be regretting dropping back as far as he has been doing, but for the sake of managing pace, that could be all important for making sure he can bring this car home.
Yeah, might have just had it off boost for a little while, and now he's back on it. Now, maybe he knew he was on the broadcast. Could have had us on the other screen, so, oh, I'm on the screen, better pull out a bit of a quicker lap time. And while we're watching, he went up to a 6-second advantage. So, Goofball Antics, well, the superlatives don't end for his season so far in that BMW 320, which we thought might struggle to make it onto the podium in the early stages of this season. He's finished every race on the podium. 2 second places if he finishes in second tonight, 2 third places and a first place, and he would lead the championship by 11 points over Sam Smith, with Berto reclaiming third in the championship behind with his DNF in Barbagallo. So this championship is very much on for young and old, with very much a rabbit in the hare situation with these BMW 320s and the Porsche 935 turbos.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's any driver in this field who's been outperforming their car, it would have to be Goofball Antics. Been producing some phenomenal results for what that car should be able to do. Of course, we've talked at length of the power differences and the weight differences between all these vehicles, and a lot of these tracks that we've visited so far have been very fast tracks, with the exception being Barbagallo last time out. But Goofball, nevertheless, has been able to finish on the podium every race so far and is on track for a second position, which would see him elevated to the lead of the championship given Sam Smith's absence.
Trying to see if we can catch any other battles on track. Probably the closest two cars at the moment are Tyrrell and Pablo, as Ben Rhodes decides that it's not all going to be Brenton Foley getting the drive-through penalties. He collects another one. He's obviously been driving a little bit more carefully since he collected his other three, because we haven't seen one for a little while. But of course, once you get one, makes it very easy to get another one. Tyrrell leads Pablo by 3.5 seconds. Now, in the race in Barbagallo, they had a pretty good battle, and it was Pablo who came out ahead in that one, finishing in 9th place, and Tyrrell finished in 10th. Positions reversed tonight, and this would be Tyrrell's best result of the season so far, with 10th, 12th, 10th, and a DNF to his name so far. So he'll be pretty happy if he can get inside the top 10 and get the points for 9th place.
That's exactly right. He is quite far down the points as it stands at the moment, and Brenton Foley's just coming through pit lane now. That served his second drive-through penalty. So, or was it his third? I've lost track of
I think it was 2 for him, and goodness knows how many for Ben Rhodes.
Yeah, as Ben Rhodes, as we speak, now comes into the pit lane to serve one of his drive-through penalties. So the gap now at the front is still the same as it was, about 6 seconds, as Berto now comes onto the back of Brenton Foley to put a lap on him as well, with Foley currently sitting in 8th position as a result of that drive-through penalty that he served.
But every time they come through to serve those drive-through penalties, they're driving past the two cars that they're going to score more points than tonight, Greg Tara and Bang, who DNF'd.
That's exactly right. So as long as they're taking home some points, that will be very important. And as these battles start to wind down towards the end of the season, those smatterings of points could be all the difference. Those of you who are paying attention and watching along with ARW Season 7 in the caterhams will possibly remember, after the conclusion of the last race, I think it was Madbird and Decimage, potentially,
yeah,
were tied on points, and the countback went to 4th place finishes, which is nothing I've ever seen before in any racing category ever.
It was incredible, and it goes to show how a DNF can cost you very, very badly in a countback situation. So even if your car is, completely hobbled and, an absolute liability, as long as you can get out of the way of the leaders when they come through, if you can still continue, you might as well do that, pick up the points, because that's what Rhodey's done tonight. He's 5 laps down. The car is clearly a handful after the start line incident that we saw between himself and Brenton Foley, the man on your screen. It was never going to be a result for him after that, but he just had to wait for a bit of attrition, finish the race, and that's what he's done. He's within 75% of the number of laps done by the race leader, and that means that he will score points tonight.
So as Berto crosses the line, 2 minutes remaining is the counter now, which means he will be able to finish 2 more laps before the final lap. So it will be a 34-lap race if my numbers are right. I'm not sure if they are. I'm feeling a little bit dodgy about those ones, to be honest with you. But it's going to be either 33 or 34 laps, with lap 31 now being started by Berto, and he's got a margin of 8 seconds now. So he is looking secure, signed, sealed, delivered, first place as it stands for Berto in the Pink Pig Blection Rennen Porsche. Goofball Antics, though, in the BMW 320 is still sitting in second with a sizable margin over Resist in third position. Xerus in fourth, having completely finished off Madbird as a result of their battle. And the error that Madbird made in turn 1, as we saw earlier. He's currently sitting in 5th position ahead of Roadhog in 6th, which is still a great result from him. Nether in 7th, where he started his race as well. Brenton Foley is 8th. So despite starting in last position, he's still made up a few spots, which is great for Foley, but not as great as he would have expected, unfortunately, for him, as he gets the blue flags from Goofball Antics behind him. Tyrrell is sitting in 9th position, 1 up from where he started, with Pablo in 10th.
Well,
in another
Pablo's catching, though.
Yeah, he's very, very close. He's got the lights ablaze as they go down the back straight, and that could be a very dicey battle in the last few laps. It'll be a repeat of what we saw in Barbagallo, of these two getting really racy with each other. Rody being the last runner on track at the moment in 11th, 3 laps down from the rest of the field. But keep your eyes on Pablo, the interceptor, with those lights blazing in the rearview mirror of Tyrrell ahead of him for Jeff Vader Racing in the green Mobil 1 machine.
The race leaders just crossed the line about 5 seconds ago, and the timer's still 10 seconds away, so we'll get 2 more laps by my maths. So that gives us 2 more laps to enjoy this battle. See if Pablo can make his way past Tyrrell. The nerves will be pretty high in Tyrrell right now because he's in line for his best result of the season so far, and he'll want to stay there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But Pablo's all over him like a cheap suit at the moment. The gap's 5/10 of a second, which is pretty much negligible around a track like this. So as soon as he starts getting close, he's already having a look into the penultimate corner, which is a little bit brave, given the margin of about 0.6 of a second. It's hard to make that up under brakes. But within the next 2 laps, I would say that these two are going to be... Oh, there's a yellow flag. Rody's crashed at the pit entry. That's
big
huge.
crash. What happened there? Let's catch a replay. I want to come back to the leading battle because that gap is 3.5 seconds. I think that's a bit close for comfort. If Berto's just managing the gap, that seems like he's doing it very, very...
I'd say you've got a timing issue there because from what I can see and from what I can look at on the screen, the gap is about 5 seconds. He's going pretty slowly through the corners, so he's just lifting and coasting. He's still managing that very well.
Yeah, let's see if we can see Goofball Antics from the onboard. Oh, we can see Berto up ahead. Oh, I'd say that is a pretty accurate. It's gone out to 4.5 seconds now, but Berto, I don't know. Based on the live timing that we get from live races, last lap around for Goofball Antics was a 43.4, which was 0.8 of a second faster than the time set by Berto. Maybe Berto is underfueled and he's just managing his fuel a little bit. He has come across the line to start what we believe is the final lap of the race. So
yes,
as long as he makes it to the end, white flag for Bleckschuppen-Rennen Berto, he could potentially be on course for his 2nd race win of the championship. He'd reclaim 3rd in the championship, but Goofball Antics behind him would reclaim the lead of the championship, and that would be, if I'm not wrong, the 4th lead change in the championship in the 5 rounds that we've had so far, with Berto leading the opening round, Goofball Antics taking the championship lead after that, and then after that Sam Smith taking it, and now Goofball Antics would take it back. So Rody in the background, that car severely damaged. He's going to take points, but only just.
Is crawling around this circuit now, trying to get the points from crossing the line, which he will do if he can make it back around to the start-finish line. Just going to have another quick look at this battle here between Tyrrell and Pablo. They're both getting absolutely hammer and tongs at each other as they go through turn 2 in the S's now. They're very close, but Pablo's drifted right off the apex, so he's lost a lot of time through the S's, and I'd say he's forfeited that battle now to Tyrrell, unless Tyrrell makes a mistake. Berto is now coming across back to the lead now. Sorry to jump between those two guys very quickly there.
Yeah, we just
Berto's going to the penultimate corner now. 3 seconds ahead of Goofball Antics, so it's a lot tighter than we thought it was going to be for Berto. But big lock up in the final corner, but he still keeps it together. Birdo crosses under the bridge now onto the final straight. He crosses the line and he wins here in Watkins Glen. It's his first win since the season opener in Brno. So Birdo is now in third position, I believe, in the championship as a result of that win. Goofball Antics, phenomenal race for him in the BMW 320 there. And Resist is our next runner on track. And if he stays where he is now, he will finish third, which is a phenomenal result for Resist.
30-second advantage over his brother, Xeris, in fourth place. I've been calling this since the middle of the Caterham series. Our next podium sitter in Apex Rear Wing, and Resist flashes the lights because he is on the podium for the first time in Apex Rear Wing. Third place in the BMW M1. I called him as a dark horse at the beginning of the broadcast for a podium with that BMW M1, and he has not let me down. And what a fantastic result from Resist. Now, Xeris is in a bit of traffic, and he's in between that battle between Tyrrell and Pablo. So that is very, very unfortunate for those two. Just bad timing, really. Xeris is coming through, and he finishes fourth. Tyrrell gets ahead of Pablo, or stays ahead of Pablo in their battle over 10th and 9th place.
Meanwhile, back in 5th position, and it was very close between Madbird and Roadhog. So I'd say Madbird made an error somewhere along the line, or he's just managing fuel. I'm not sure what's happening there, but these two are bumper to bumper as they go through the final corner. Can Roadhog make a last-minute lunge to the line? I don't think he's going to be able to. It's going to be Madbird. He crosses the line by 0.4 of a second over Roadhog, so that was very close in the end there. And I think that is all of the runners on the track so far. So that is race done and dusted.
Brenton Foley was a lap down. Nether is a lap down. He's finished the race. And that is everyone. So Ben Rhodes is still running. He's in 11th, of course. 5 laps down. But, of course, that is 75%. That is at least 75% of the race. So he will get points. Which, considering where he was after the start of the race, is probably a decent result to get the points, because 2 cars DNF'd, so he will get the points for 11th place, which is potentially quite valuable at the end of the championship. 5 points if you're playing at home. So, Birdo becomes the second man in this championship to win 2 races for Apex Rear Wing. And what a topsy-turvy championship we've had so far. We've had 3 different winners, and only 2 of them have won 2 races so far.
Yeah, absolutely. The only 2 guys who have won 2 races so far would be Sam Smith and Birdo. And naturally, you would think that one of them would be leading the championship, but no, it's Goofball Antics as it stands in the BMW 320.
That is the most remarkable part of it, isn't it? That of our 2 drivers who've won 2 races, neither of them are leading the championship.
Unfortunately, through no fault of Sam Smith, who was able to finish on the podium for every single race before missing this one, the unfortunate after effect of not being able to make this race means he is now down in what I believe is 2nd position in the championship. And Birdo's DNF and the 9th position finish that he had earlier in the season means that the sheer consistency of Goofball Antics, having podiumed every single race so far, means he is currently leading the way.
And we're lucky enough to be joined by our podium sitters in this race. Can't wait to have a bit of a chat with all of them. Birdo, congratulations. It looked like you had that race absolutely in hand from the opening lap of qualifying, to be fair. You absolutely dominated in practice qualifying. The first stint of the race, you had this big gap, but it was a lot closer in the end than we were expecting. Were you managing anything towards the end of that race?
Yeah, it was good fun. Something just sort of clicked with this track, I think, and all the practice with the teammates did pretty well. So massive shout out to those guys. Towards the end of the race, yeah, look, managing fuel really. Otherwise we would have struggled. But look, even when I turned it all the way up, Heathy was right there. So big shout out to him because he was quick.
Absolutely. Well, turning our attention to Goofball Antics, your lap time in qualifying frankly astonished us because it was a lot faster than you'd done in practice. So
it was immense, wasn't it?
It was immense. Yes, it was immense. So you were putting Birdo under pressure at the end of that race. Where did that pace come from?
I assume it came from Birdo having to fuel save because I was just trying to take it easy, make sure I was on 2 track cuts already from that first lap. So I just wanted to make sure I didn't get another couple and have to serve a drive-through. So I was actually taking it easy. That was all down to just Berto taking it easier, I guess.
You did bog it down off the start, though, I noticed. Are you struggling with the launches in the BMW 320? It was very lucky for you to not be able to not get caught up in any first lap action. So, yeah, I guess it was just a testament to your ability to charge ahead and be able to make up time in the BMW 320.
Consistency. Yeah, it was a shocking start. I haven't been struggling with getting launched, just that particular moment, this race I did. My launches in practice and stuff have been all right, but I'd actually said beforehand that luckily I had zeros behind me and another 320, so I wasn't going to, get rammed up the arse or anything. And, well, there we go.
It was
There
a
you
little bit
go.
of light contact, I noticed, but nothing
Excuse the language, sorry.
I think arse is all
Remembered
right.
where we were?
We've said worse.
Okay.
Let's turn our attention to Resist. First time on the podium for Apex Rear Wing, and I've been saying that you'll be finishing on the podium since the middle of the Caterham series, I said on your cool down lap. So congratulations on a fantastic result tonight, and very well done indeed.
Woo! Yeah, thanks, mate. It's good to get that monkey off me back. Obviously, I got a bit of luck there. During the race, it came out that Zeros accidentally swapped too many tyres. So I managed to pass him during the pit stops.
Well, there we go. That answers that question for us, Matty. So big gap at the end of that race, though. So you were still lapping pretty consistently, and you were ahead of all of those guys before the pit stops anyway. So not to discredit yourself.
Yeah, I've just been really concentrating on my practice and preparation, and that's definitely shown the last two races. So it's good to be rewarded for that.
Fantastic, great battle with Goofball Antics as well.
Yeah, that was good. Goof keeping me honest, pushing me. I was constantly doing PBs with him sitting behind me. So I was pretty happy to keep him behind me for as long as I did, considering his qualifying pace.
It's remarkable how much having someone sitting behind you can improve your concentration. So congratulations on your first podium, and huge congratulations to our other podium sitters, especially Berto for the race win and Goofball Antics for retaking the championship lead. Matty, closing thoughts?
Good to see a lot of these guys really starting to get to grips with these cars now, especially Resist. I know that BMW M1 is quick, and I've been waiting for it to be showing its true potential on the podium, and now it's great to see Resist finally make his way up there as we speak. But next, we move on to Montreal, and in particular, the classic 1980s version of Montreal, and that's going to be a very hairy circuit for these cars, isn't it, Stairs?
It will be very, very tricky. Let's put it that way. There were pants browning moments tonight. There'll be pants browning moments next week. I can absolutely guarantee you that. That's the Montreal classic version of the circuit from 1988 in 1 week's time. Don't miss it. Exactly the same time next week. Bye for now.